The Attack on Titan anime has just recently ended, and oh boy, I feel so empty. Unlike when the manga had ended, the anime has received so much praise and love for how it portrayed the ending. They fixed up the dialogue well in the controversial areas, making it to where Armin is no longer thanking his friend for committing mass genocide, but instead using that as a moment to shine more clarity over Eren's character and also have Armin realize that he's also partially responsible for the rumbling by causing Eren to go through the path that he did. But one big question that I think a lot of people are still very confused about, till this very day, is the question regarding Ymir Fritz. Even after the manga had ended, many people were still very up in air as to what exactly caused Ymir to love King Fritz and that whole situation right there. We're gonna get into that on today's video, and joining me here for this video, we got Champ Animation.
Hey guys, it's me, Champ. Boy, do we have a lot to talk about. Thanks for having me on, Star Blast.
So the interesting thing about Ymir is that I think that she's a character that's essentially meant to be interpretive, and that's part of the reason why I think that the ending to Attack on Titan, it was bound to have a lot of hate because of how multiple different ways that people are going to interpret something. It was just bound to not be received well, I think, in that regard.
Not only that, but I think it's like connecting it to Eren as well. It just feels like both character motivations, they didn't get what they wanted, and it's like both Ymir and Eren both yearn to have freedom.
Kind of somewhat, but it's in different ways, I think, just because Eren does want freedom, but the problem with Ymir is that I don't think that she even knows what she wants. She kind of just goes along with what, Eren's plan is. What Eren does not exactly affect what she does. She's just going to help him at this point because Eren's really the only person that really gave her the choice of being able to confidently just live for herself and not be bound by, the curse of King Fritz. And that's why, when we saw her crying after Eren hugged her and told her that, you can make your own decision. Imagine someone who is a slave and lives out her life for, other people and doesn't get the chance to think for herself. Imagine all of the sadness, the regret, the fear, and someone actually validating the feelings that she has. When you have someone that acknowledges your existence, who acknowledges, you as a person, with Eren saying, you're not a god, you're not a slave, you are a person. It's the first time, I think, really ever, where Ymir actually gets to be acknowledged and feel like, herself. But she's also crying because she's nervous because of how many times in her past when she acted for herself that it resulted in bad things to happen to her. When she freed the pigs, for example, that's when everyone in the village, churned on her and called her out, since King Fritz was gonna cut off everyone's hands, I guess.
It's basically like she's crying because this, for the first time, somebody's asking her what is that you want? You don't have to do what other people say. But it's also like she's still kind of stuck doing the same thing, because even though she breaks down and starts crying when Eren asks that question and tells you you don't have to follow anyone, she's still kind of following what Eren is doing, if that makes sense. She's still part of that cycle, and we don't see her smile until Mikasa
beheads him.
Yeah, to be honest, I feel like Eren and Mikasa, both of them showing that how much those two are connected, the love they have for each other, their friendship, that bond that they have. Not only did it remind Ymir of how she was kind of slave to King Fritz, but it also shows that there is hope to break that bond, and basically Mikasa embodies what she wanted.
Well, you said that Ymir loved King Fritz. Now that's the thing that I think a lot of people get very confused on, because I don't think that Ymir actually loved King Fritz in that way. So like when Eren says love King Fritz, that is his interpretation. In order to kind of get into the aspect of why Ymir loves King Fritz, you have to ask yourself, instead of asking yourself why does Ymir love King Fritz, you have to ask what caused Ymir to love King Fritz. That little bit in changing the question really, I think, makes the big difference in how you then perceive the information that's on screen, and it helps everything, connect together, I think. What caused Ymir to love King Fritz, obviously it was the world that she grew up in. She lost her parents to him. To just bring it all down, she was raised and nurtured to believe that the world revolved around King Fritz, which is why not only is she just a slave from the perspective of herself, but she is viewed in that way from all of those around her. And I think that, you know, she does genuinely deep down yearn for freedom, which is why she even freed the pigs, you know, in the first place. But obviously, you know, her making that decision, you know, resulted badly for her. But what's the point? Where am I getting at with all of this? Ymir's connection to King Fritz isn't as a result of love. It's about her not really having the chance to know anything else in life other than, you know, the way that she lived by and the way that, you know, that King Fritz has to be, I guess, worshipped.
During that time, she's kind of brainwashed into only living a certain way.
Exactly.
You know, she doesn't see any other options. She only sees, okay, King Fritz, that's all that matters, and that's only what she kept going for. She had nothing else to go for.
Exactly.
So basically what you're saying is like King Fritz was basically her life. Without it, she had nothing else to do.
No one presented her with really any other options. Even though she had the option, she just wasn't mature enough. Like, she's a slave and she's a kid. She was grew like that from like birth. She didn't have really, there was no other option that she could even conceive that could, you know, allow her to be free of King Fritz on that mental state that she was put in. That's exactly why for 2,000 years, within the paths, she continued to create titans for each of the 9 inheritors.
The idea of doing anything else but for King Fritz and just continuing with creating the titans, everything that she thought of was because of King Fritz. She was still working for him, still worshiping him, even protecting him, and died because of it for him. She never really was able to think for herself, and it's very heartbreaking, the fact that, you know, she had to go through that. And when Eren finally is able to be like, hey, you don't have to do this anymore, it's like relief for her, but it's also painful because that's all she knows.
And everything that we just went over right there, that's the in-story reason for why she has that connection to King Fritz. There's another reason that is outside, based on the way Isayama wrote the characters, why she had to be written in that way. And that is because in every way, Ymir was meant to be the polar opposite of Eren. And we can kind of see that in the direction with the clothing that they wear. So Ymir is wearing mostly like all white clothes. Eren is wearing all darker clothing and such. So if we were to take that quote that Kenny said in season 3 of Attack on Titan, that everyone is a slave to something, it makes so much sense for how we end up viewing, you know, the characters here. So obviously Ymir is a slave in a metaphorical way, but she's a slave to, you know, the influence of King Fritz. Not necessarily love, but we'll just go ahead and call it love for simplicity's sake. And I don't think it's Stockholm Syndrome either, because what Ymir has is a codependency. What Ymir has is a mindset that the way that she goes about, you know, her life, like with King Fritz, is the only way that she knows. It's just basically drilled into her that this is how she needs to do things. But anyways, she's a slave to the dependency of King Fritz, whereas with Eren, he's a slave to, you know, freedom without being oppressed. With that, he has the freedom to make his own choices. But you notice how, like, where this obsessive slavery towards freedom resulted in Eren, where he ended up going and seeing no other alternative than to wipe out 80% of the population via the rumbling. Ymir, because of like what she was trapped by, she was essentially trapped in the paths. But you notice how, like, with the way that Isayama wrote these characters, the very thing that traps Eren, the very freedom that is causing Eren to go down this path, is actually the thing that Ymir actually needs. It will solve her problem. And the thing that Ymir is trapped by is the thing that will end up solving Eren's problem. Because the thing that with Eren is that he needs reconciliation with people. He needs to reconcile with his friends. And you notice that, you know, throughout the show in the 4th season, most of the time he's trapped behind bars. He's stripped away from being able to communicate with Mikasa and Armin, and not really being able to get that sort of reconciliation. And honestly, if he did get that reconciliation, it probably would have resulted in a different ending. But the entire future that would have been there had he received that reconciliation would have just ceased to exist and would have caused problems and such in the timeline. I mean, you obviously know, like, you know, this is what caused it, but because of the fact that the story is leading towards that point, if Isayama were to actually write something like that, like the possibility of him doing it, it would have made the entire story structure from that point collapse, and he'd have to, like, you know, reimagine and such, you know, a whole different, you know, future, which is why it was very imperative for him to, like, know the ending of the story right beforehand when he was writing everything in the beginning to make sure that everything in the timeline fit. And in an interview that came out with him, he said that that was the most restrictive part of writing a manga. For him is like making sure that everything, you know, sticks and goes towards the ending. He can't change his mindset that he originally had when he first started the story. He has to stick with it all the way through, just as Eren has to stick to his mindset on wanting freedom. He made that comparison in the interview, and it's just like, when you think about that, you know, that whole perspective, it actually makes it even more, I think, you know, genius in terms of the writing and how this works out. So like, really, this was the only, you know, possible solution to the ending of Attack on Titan, from how they just, you know, went about it. The headaches that Mikasa had when Ymir peered into her head, where this, like the pathway that would end up going with all the foreshadowing and such that Eren had. Like, even the part where before Eren even realized that he is a Titan shifter, he's stuck in the mouth. You can see that, like, Eren is literally saying, I will never die in a place like this. You know, the Santa Claus Titan, that dude, yeah, where does he end up dying? Inside of the mouth of a Titan, where Mikasa went and beheaded him. So yeah, like, you can definitely tell that this ending has just been planned out from the very get-go.
Ymir and Eren, they both became the things that they hated the most. If you think about it, like, if you're Ymir and you're a slave, you don't want to be in that situation. You don't want to be serving a king for the rest of your life. She hates that, and that's what she ends up doing. Eren, he freaking hates Titans. He doesn't want to become one of them or become the enemy and destroy everything, but he does that. Both of these characters feel like they have no choice to become what they hate in order to try to achieve what they want. Even then, they still don't get it.
So here's the thing. People would look at the one person who did wrong and say, hey, you are wrong. I'm gonna quote Martin Luther King. When you have killers, when you have all of these, like, you know, different types of criminals, you shouldn't be looking at them and saying that is wrong. You have to look at the entire society and see what caused that. And when you look at Attack on Titan and how they go about that example, Marley even recognizes, like, when Eren is doing the rumbling, that this is essentially all of that hatred that they sent to Paradis coming back at them in full force. Like, this is the result of them, because they kind of, like, in a way, they're not wrong in that they essentially made it to where Eren, like, felt that he had no other option rather than to enact the rumbling in order to protect the people of Paradis and you know, all of his friends and such.
Both Eren and Ymir, they are kind of forced into these situations. But in Loki, there is one sacred timeline, the main timeline. Everything happens the way it's supposed to in one way. And in the Attack on Titan universe, everything's supposed to happen one way as well. So the fact that, if you think about it, even Eren and Ymir, everything they can try to do is still gonna go play out the exact same way, and that's how they also are slaves to time. Here, I'm gonna draw it right here on the, you know, they probably won't see this, but imagine. There you go. You probably can't see that, but there you go. There's a line. We're doing some Back to the Future stuff. You have the main timeline. Eren can try to go this way. He can try to go that way. He can try to go any other way, but it's all going to go back in one direction, one ending. There's always one ending, one starting point. Ymir's the starting point, Eren's the ending. So no matter what's going to happen, the cycle is never going to be broken. And it really sucks, because I wish Ymir wasn't a slave. If she wasn't a slave and she didn't find the Titan powers, maybe things could have played out differently. Maybe civilization could have been peaceful. Maybe King Fritz would have died from war or natural causes or whatever. And what I like about Attack on Titan's ending is that Isayama, he didn't go out to make a happy ending. He made an ending that reflects our real world. It's an ending that it's not really happy. I mean, we wish it was happy, but not everyone gets a happy ending. We wish we could change, you know, what kind of like the characters themselves, like Eren and Ymir. We wish we could change things. We wish we can save everybody. We wish there was a peaceful solution. But unfortunately, that's not how the world works. That's not how people work. People are violent.
I think that the timeline could have been broken if Eren had a shift in mentality. The problem is that if Eren was to have a shift in mentality, then the future that he saw would have never been, he would have never seen that future in the first place. So it's like he's essentially trapped and stuck and set to this exact mentality from the very get-go, because if he was to have anything else, the timeline would have never been seen. Nothing can get changed here. It's like he's stuck, like he's aware of the fact that he is stuck. And it's almost like he even understands the fact that he is a slave to this whole thing, because like what he said, at the very end of the day, during that conversation between, you know, him and Armin, he wanted to see this site. From the very get-go, like as a kid, he wanted the world outside of the walls to be empty, so that him and Armin could travel. It stems from that, but it also stems from like another thing. He would have wanted to see this to assure the fact that no further conflict could happen outside of the walls, outside of his lifespan for Paradis. Like it's a really complicated thing when you think about it, because look at all of the other options that was presented to Eren and why those options did not work out. So first we had the option of that Hanji presented, which was to essentially make a test rumbling to essentially buy out more time to make sure that they can still live in peace. The problem is that more and more people would have had to inherit Titans, and what does that mean? Someone would have to eat Eren and inherit his Titan. Someone would have to eat that other person and inherit it. And it's like, most likely from the way that the story was talked about in the flashbacks, is that would have been like Eren's friends. It could have been John. It could have been, you know, Coney, like, you know, all these different people. It could have been Mikasa. I'm sure Mikasa would have liked to eat Eren. But anyways, Eren would not want his friends to be able to have to, you know, go through that like that, since he very clearly said that he wants all of them to be able to live long lives. So therefore that option, test rumbling and such, is not going to happen. It's off the table. The second option that was presented to Eren is Zeke's euthanization plan. I don't even think that it's necessarily the worst possible plan. Basically making it to where all of the children of Ymir, all the descendants of Ymir, they would not be able to reproduce. People like to think about, like, you know, which side they would have taken. I don't even necessarily think that. I think it's an interesting conversation, but I don't think that's important for the context of the story. What matters here, and why these options are even being presented in the first place, is to show how Eren feels about it. Because if Zeke was to use the power of Ymir to strip the Eldians of their ability to reproduce, the way that Eren would have seen that is that their freedom then would have been limited and tarnished. And like, as we've known when it comes to Eren, is that he doesn't want that for people. He doesn't want people to then be limited in their freedom and their ability to do whatever, since his view of freedom is very different. Even though this would technically, I think, logically fix the problem with the world by letting all the Eldians, you know, slowly die off and not have to worry about it for the rest of the world. And I kind of agree, you know, with even Eren's perspective. Like, that kind of sounds messed up. Like, even though this stuff has been going on for a while, it's better, I guess, for people to like live out their lives and such and die peacefully rather than to then, you know, later be killed by Marley. I'm not sure exactly what choices I would make in that situation, but I at the very least understand why Eren wouldn't pick that. And this is essentially why, because of the fact that Eren, with his lifespan, like, he only has a couple of years left, this is why he felt that he was trapped and had to go through with the rumbling. Like, it was the only option that he would have been satisfied with. Even if, like, all the choices that led up to this point, you know, led to the result of, like, the death of Sasha, the death of Hanji, the way that he sees it, any of the other choices would have resulted in other people dying or other catastrophes that happen. It's kind of like the thing in Avengers Infinity War. Like, we don't see all of those other, you know, different possible outcomes, different timelines and such. Like, we only see that one outcome to when Iron Man, you know, gets all of the Infinity Stones and snaps it. We only see that one outcome that Eren will be satisfied with. All the other stuff does not matter in the context of the story, because it's not about what we want. It's about what Eren wants. Champ, let me ask you a question. From the way that we perceived, and I know we talked a little bit about this before recording this video, but what do you feel that is your big takeaway from Attack on Titan? Like, what is the theme here of this that you think that the show is telling you?
What I get from it is that human nature will always be the same. We'll always be violent. We'll always go to war with each other. We'll always have disagreements. It's something that you can't change. You cannot change human nature. You can't ever have everlasting peace. It's not something that can just be easily resolved, and that's the problem with Eren. He tries to find these ways to make it like, oh, if I just become the bad guy, everyone else would be heroes and my friends can live out a long life. But here's the thing, we don't know how Armin, Mikasa, Connie, everyone else, we don't know how their lives play out. Supposedly it's peaceful, but they have to keep a peace that can probably be broken at any second, because that's just not how things work. There's going to be people who want to fight other people who want to commit genocide. There's people who want to take another group of people out. So when I'm watching this series, I'm rethinking of everything that Isayama has written and everything that I've seen from all 4 seasons. It just goes to show that when we're kids, we have this idea of, you know, anything's possible. We have these wild dreams to do anything, go anywhere. But once you see the evil of humanity and the evil being the Titans morally, we see that it can change us and our perception of reality. Depending on the person, you can either grow like Armin, become a leader and find a way to overcome those challenges, or be like Eren, where the way he fights is more through violence and genocide. He believes that in order to tame peace, he must get rid of 80%. Armin and everyone else believe there's a diplomatic solution, and that's how people are today. Look at history, World War II with the Nazis, but it is terrible of like how people have so much hate for each other. Even going on today, it's a cycle that's never going to be broken. Isayama clearly made that a point, that the cycle will never ever be broken. That's why he didn't write a happy ending, because it's stuff that's still happening right now. It's a reflection of the real world, except there's not Titans and hot anime waifus.
That's because Titans well, that's just goes to show that I think Titans weren't the problem, humanity was the problem.
Humanity was the problem. The Titans were just a weapon that was... Think about it this way. The earth gives us resources. It gives us animals. It gives us plants. It gives us organisms.
Well, you'll say earth, I say
life.
God, but yeah, like that's
But you know what I mean, like
yeah.
It give us resources, and what do humanity does? Think about this with Ymir. She's given something, a gift from the planet, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Titan powers. She doesn't know what to do with it, but what does King Fritz does? Let's make that into a weapon.
Yeah.
What do? We take resources, we make guns, we make spears, we turn fire into something that can burn people.
I mean, it already can burn people, but yeah, I get the point. We figure out different ways to like harm people and try to weaponize it and make us
nuclear war, atomic bombs,
chemicals,
anything. We turn something that can give life or provide for people and turn it into something to use against them.
This is why I think Ymir is so important to analyze, because I think that her story is the key to understanding the theme of Attack on Titan for me personally. And this ends up going into like why I ended up feeling so empty. A lot of people think that the theme of Attack on Titan, because of Ymir's backstory, suddenly becomes a love story. And love is an important factor, but I don't think that's the thing that Isayama is trying to convey here. So a lot of these characters throughout the story, like we said, are slaves to something. Like what Kenny says. So like, Eren is a slave. Mikasa is a slave to her, love for Eren, which is why she will follow him and such. Erwin was kind of a slave to like his position to maintain. He had to maintain a certain persona and be that sort of monster in order to be able to lead the Survey Corps into, into the direction. He had to be like a heartless person. That was
he was also a slave to the goal of seeing what was outside the walls. That was his main motivation. He wanted to get out there. He wanted to know, because I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that his father was, I think, trying to understand what was outside the walls, and I think he got killed for it.
Yeah.
You can correct me if I'm wrong about that.
No, I think you're right. We can presume that something like that is essentially what took place there. And then Armin, he ended up being in a very similar situation that Erwin was in that he had to be the one to maintain a certain, position and such. Actually, no, it was mostly Hanji. Hanji couldn't take it. She was stressing out. She's like, how do I can't do this stuff. But she had to. And then Armin, I think was a slave to...
He was a slave to make the hard decisions, basically.
Essentially,
he was the one that had to take the responsibility Erwin had.
Yes. So basically, we have all these different characters that are a slave to something. Essentially, where does this go at Attack on Titan? What does this lead to? It leads us to the end. Mikasa's obviously like in love with Eren. She's somewhat of a slave to her feelings for Eren. But what is she able to do at the end? She's able to let go of Eren and rise above that very thing that controls her. She's able to break through those chains of which binded her and be able to go in and be ahead Eren. That I think is so sad, because for anyone to be able to do something like that is just an inherently difficult thing to do, because when you understand the fact that these characters are based off of real life, you realize that everyone in their own day-to-day lives are a slave to something. Some people are a slave to the internet and they just stick to Twitter all day. Some people are like just a slave to their food. They just like some people are a slave to drinking. Everyone has specific habits or specific way that which they grew up to. We're also, when it comes to like your friend circle and people who you talk to, friends around you, you are in a way specifically influenced by those around you as well. If you end up having an infatuation with someone in your group, you end up blindly following them despite the fact that it's causing ramifications for someone. And the reason why I think it's so heartbreaking seeing Mikasa being able to break through that whole thing of her infatuation for Eren is because we can understand just from our own day-to-day lives just how hard it is to be able to break through and make a hard decision like this, especially because of how well throughout the series it was displayed how much Mikasa did love Eren from the childhood, you know, that she had with Eren, like to basically, you know, the entire series, like them, you know, spending time with one another. Like there was a lot of subtlety there, and even the part 2 when Mikasa thought that Eren died, and then she was crying and such when he realized that he was alive. Like, and this is, I'm talking about in like episode 6 or 7 when they found out that Eren can, you know, is a Titan shifter. Scenes
from season 1.
Yeah, from season 1. So all of this stuff, you know, regarding Mikasa, tying it to the theme, Ymir seeing what Mikasa did, being able to realize, wait, I can totally let King Fritz go. Well, look what she did. I can definitely do the same. Then thinking back, and this is where that picture of, you know, King Fritz being impaled by the spear instead of Ymir comes from. It's to signify the fact that Ymir would have actually made the decision. If she was to go back and redo things, she would have let King Fritz die. She's realizing King Fritz is a horrible person, that, you know, she was basically, you know, enslaved to him, and because of that, she's essentially able to let go of King Fritz, which also inherently releases the curse of the Titans from anyone ever happening ever again. The Titan powers are just gone from that point when she's able to, like, you know, sort of rest. She's not able to rest in peace even after Eren is the one to give her that option. And I think a lot of people, they misunderstand the purpose of Attack on Titan, I think, when they see Ymir's intentions. So people are like, why didn't Ymir then be able to free herself the moment that Historia decided to, like, go against her fathers? Because, and I can literally tell you from the get-go, if you watch the show, Historia never had a deep connection with her dad. If anything, her dad just up and found her and, like, started telling her what to do. Mikasa is really the only character you can look at throughout the show, and I can really think of, that has such a deep connection with another person that lasted throughout the series in the first place, who is actually able to break through that for the better sake of humanity. There's not a single other character like that.
If anything, it's like you can kind of see, like, why didn't Ymir present herself in front of Historia? It's like Historia was kind of like almost along that path of following what Ymir did. Because Historia, if you think about it, in season 2, when she's talking to the other Ymir breaks it down saying that, oh, Historia, you have nothing to live for. You just believe that if you just follow this certain way, that you will feel like gratitude, or you feel like you've done something with your life if you just do what other people say. And if you think about it, that goes back to past Ymir, slave Ymir. What was her intention? She believes that she had nothing to give in life, except for, you know, giving her life for King Fritz, just like how Historia is giving her life in season 1 and 2 to the Survey Corps. You know, she just throwing away their lives so they feel like they can feel important. If you think about it, everyone has a connection to Ymir. That's what I mean. Everyone has a connection to Ymir. We're told he's not only feel like he's a slave to what Marley wants him to do, but to his friends and, you know, his love for Annie. He is, even when at the end of season 3, he's like, there's nothing but this, and that's when he goes all villain mode, and all these characters are suffering and, like you said, are a slave to something, whether it's for good intentions or not. That cycle keeps continuing, and Mikasa is one of the few that can break it.
Yes, exactly. That one thing that Kenny said really, I think, highlights all of the characteristics of everyone in Attack on Titan. It's just such a good quote, I think.
Even Levi is a slave to Erwin, to the Survey Corps, to protecting the innocent, to
He's then fated to go ahead and kill off Zeke. That's really the only thing I would say, you know, from that point forward that really controls him. Other than that, Levi just does what he wants.
True. And it's like, even then, after Levi kills him, it's not like a glorious, like, victory. It's kind of something like, he's dead, but what gratification is there? Because the damage is already done.
That's the thing that I think really, adds to the emptiness, is because, like, Mikasa was able to go and just, you know, behead Eren. That was the difficult part. It was seeing the ramifications of her struggle and such right afterwards, where she still goes to, like, the tree, she's hanging out there, we're still seeing her crying when she is there, and then the bird lifting the scarf for her and everything like that. We still see, and then even in, like, the time lapse thing, she's like, as she's growing up as an adult, she's still going to, like, that grave where Eren resides in, and then even gets buried right next to him. there's no way that Mikasa was able to escape her love for Eren. She still loves Eren even after she did that. To see that, I think makes it just like so difficult, I think even more to watch. It's really a bittersweet ending. It's a realistic ending, but it's also an ending that really befits someone who went and managed to like not see any other option than to go and commit mass genocide and wiping out 80% of the population. There's really no other way that could have really gone down, you know, for Eren. I'm gonna leave off this and end off this video, I think, with one question for every single person watching. How many of you can say for yourselves that you've been able to break the chains of the very things that controlled you in life? And this is a very deep and thought out thing, because the thing that controls you, the thing that you are a slave to, is different than what other people are slave to. This is a very personal and individualistic thing, and it requires you to analyze yourself and being able to like be emotionally mature and accurate as to like that influence your day-to-day life. This could be your friends, this could be your mentality, the way you grew up, your own habits.
Well, something I want to add in real quick is like when we mean slave, like I know everyone thinks about like slave as in Ymir, like you're forced to live in a certain way.
No, more so
like,
influence. You know, the very thing
influence.
Yeah,
we're talking more about influence. So we might be forgive us if we say that in a
no. That's the thing about Attack on Titan, is that you can't take every single thing literally. If you take it literally in the sense,
what I was gonna say.
If you take a slave literal thing, then it's like you're not gonna understand what Kenny said. If you take love, the love that Ymir shared for King Fritz, literally from what Eren said, you're not gonna understand what's really going on with Ymir's character.
What ties you basically? What ties you to a certain thing, and what is like a habit that you feel like you can't break out of? For me, is finding my goal or career path, trying to do something that everyone else can, and I'm trying to break out and do the same thing. Yeah. But it's kind of impossible, you know, it feels like for me impossible, but I'm trying to fight fate, or, you know, the chains of fate. So it's something that we can all kind of relate to in life.
Yeah. Oh, another thing too, some people are a slave to their job. They can't go back.
True.
This is something that they are not even able to escape, because they don't see an option that is anywhere beyond the job and occupation that they currently have. It's like if they don't have that job, they're nothing. It's just a matter, I think, of being able to, like, you know, notice these things about your life and understanding them. I think that just being able to recognize, for all of those watching, the reason why I'm just making you think about this is because recognizing these very things will make it easier, I think, to be able to handle what circumstances you end up dealing with later, and being, as long as you are able to understand what influences you. That way, if your whole entire worldview collapse, you at least understand that this is the root cause. Like, this is this very thing that controls you. If it's gone, it would ruin you. Again, like what Mikasa did in cutting Eren's head, she obviously came to the conclusion that she would rather, you know, do that and still love Eren rather than seeing all these other innocent people die. Which I think people will say, well, like, oh, well, innocent is an opinion. We don't actually know. Like, moral of the story, yeah, no one's innocent, but, like, you know, moral of the story is that, like, you know, just trying to do things for the betterment of the world and freeing yourself for that type of purpose, I think, is the main theme. It's not about your own ambitions, it's about what's better for the rest of society. As long as you're able to stick to that sort of betterment and prevent that, you know, very thing, you know, from, you know, corrupting like it did for, like, Eren's view of freedom. Which, by the way, and that's another thing, Eren's view of freedom is not actual freedom, obviously, because he's a slave to it. It's if it was legitimately freedom, he wouldn't be a slave. It is his own personal view of that, which is why you can't look at these things in a literal sense.
It's also, if you think about, like, when he's talking to Armin at the end, when he, like, pulls up the seashell and saying it was at your feet, you know, at your feet the whole time, but he was too focused worrying about the future. He's too focused, too worried about all these things of, oh God, I gotta do this, I gotta do this, I gotta do this. There's nothing wrong with being prepared, but it's the little things. I think it's the little things that matter in life. And I'm trying to end this off on a hopeful good note, that there are your friends, your family. Not everything in the world is out to get you. There is a little bit of hope, you know, at the end of the series. We see a boy and a dog. There's still hope that humanity will still survive. There's still hope that there's still good out there, that the cycle will break, that people can get along, and not everything is a goner.
And it's unrealistic to think that anything would just not end up being excessive, but it's excessiveness that we should at the very least try to avoid. With that being said, let us know what you guys think down in the comments section down below. We hope you guys did enjoy this video. We'll see you guys next time. Take care.
Bye.